Hey, DecoNetwork users, Business Development Manager Zach Dewhurst here to give you an overview of version 8.609. When it comes to DecoNetwork, the software is always evolving. Back when I signed up 14 years ago, the software was green. There was no business hub. But over time, it has changed, it has evolved, it has grown. And 8.609, like many previous updates, is jam-packed with a lot of great updates and features. And I'm excited to talk about with them with the one and only Christopher Cruz. With that said, let's dive in. Chris, 8.609. This is a very exciting release. Lots of big updates throughout the admin, business hub, websites. We've got the Shopify integration. We can upload DST files. It's a big update. Very exciting about it, and excited to be able to go through the list with you as it's funny when it comes to these release notes, it starts of a list of like 500 and then you start whittling down the best ones to share with everybody. And then I see that list and I'm like, I love all of this. How do I find 25 favorite things to talk about? So we're going to talk about some of our favorite things with the updates, Chris. But anybody out there realizes, just visit DecoNetwork's Help Center where you can see all of the release notes for version 8.609 and all of the previous versions. They're very well documented. Everything makes a lot of sense. And when you have a question, just raise that support ticket with client services and they will take care of you. With that said, Chris, let's go over some of these updates.
Yeah, let's take a look.
All right, let's start with the deco processes. So when it comes to the decoration processes, first big one I want to stress down here in decoration pricing. Something that got added with version 8.608 was embroidery allows us to determine the price across all lines using the same artwork. And let's stress that there, same design. The design could be different in size, just so we realize. So like DTF now, you can now price DTF, DTG, any decoration process across all line items using the exact same artwork. That decoration cost will be based around the total quantity that's being decorated of it. But just keep this in mind. They could do a small print, they could do a big print. It doesn't matter. It's still seen as the same design. But this is still a very awesome update. Pricing is extremely important. That's why this is one of my favorites. So if the customer ever orders different colors, different shirts, size or styles, same artwork, quantity, decoration prices across all of those lines. Next one, Chris. Embroidery. We'll do the color palettes. So actually this is for all decoration processes. Each decoration process has always had the ability to set a color palette. Now, most decoration processes are going to be CMYK full digital, but you have your analog like screen printing or embroidery where each color in the design has its own spool of thread or bucket of ink. Well, what we could do now with a color palette is choose its availability. Chris, how do we do that?
Yep, so you'll want to uncheck that all stores option next to a palette, and then you'll have the option to choose from your available stores. And
Or
yeah, I
store
see
group?
this, yep, or store group. And I see this, be a frequent request from people doing things like team stores for schools. They want to allow the end user to make some customization, change some colors around, but they want to limit to the school colors. And
Yep.
so this is going to allow that type of functionality.
No, awesome extra tool there. Down the line, hopefully availability for decoration processes. It was close with this update, guys, but we had to get this out. That's down the line. You can actually control the whole process availability based on store. All right, Chris, probably my second favorite of all updates is for embroidery. So if you go into the designer settings for embroidery, you can now choose if the customer can recolor artwork that is in the design tool. So again, come back here, designer settings. Right here, we have a new option, allow recoloring of digitized embroidery designs. So first thing to realize, one, this is not on by default. You've got to turn this on. Secondly, you can control this for the front end site, for pre-decorated products, or even in Business Hub. I love this ability, but I even love also to control where it can be done. And we'll just do a quick demo here, Chris. So if I come over to Business Hub, have an order pulled up, I know it's text and you're like, but this is actually a DST file. So in addition to being able to recolor embroidery artwork, we can upload a DST file, and that is huge. It has always been we had to upload an EMB file. And the reason being, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, DST can't actually really store colors. So from what I
That's right.
understand, we upload a DST. It's actually kind of being converted to an EMB so we can recolor it, and then we can output a DST so we can sew it.
That's right. Yeah, and this one has been a long time coming. It's kind of been in the back burner, and we've kind of slowly been chipping away at it, trying to get it to where it needed to be. And yeah, I'm glad we're making it available in this release.
So, yep, you see here, I uploaded it. It is a design, and I can now change the color. Now, when Chris first showed me this new feature, um, don't ask why I went to pink. Colin would find that funny. But when we first talked about this feature, and it confused me initially, Chris, was there were a lot more colors here to choose from than what I saw in the design itself. So everybody knows all of the colors that are going to display is actually all of the stitch breaks, which I think is really awesome because anybody who's done any embroidery knows one size doesn't fit all. It's like screen printing. We don't use just one mesh count to print with. With embroidery, we have different thread weights, different needle sizes, and so forth. So just something like this. Let's say I had a big block of white text or a big block of white, and then I had real thin text. Well, I might use two different types of white thread to get the best results. So breaking it down by stitch really only enhances the ability to save those job notes and know exactly how you did it so you can replicate it when you get that reorder.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really powerful enhancement. I know a lot of people are eager to get their hands on it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I know we are. As much as we've had no problem using some Wilcom other features, it's just always more convenient to stay on one platform. All right, so products. When it comes to products, there's several updates here, Chris. One, here's one. Going back to your stores. If we talk about custom fields, pretty much all of them, other than a couple, have always had the ability to charge more to use the field. And what has not been possible is to charge for text. So if I just wanted to do, for example, player name, and it's going to be a text field. So the customer's going to type here. Well, as soon as they start dropping in characters, I can assess a fee. Before 8.609, I would have to create a custom field. Do you want a custom name? They would choose, yeah, like yes, then it would add $5. Then they would type in the name. Well, what the problem was, the customer could technically type their name, forget to pay for it. It just had all types of potential little issues. So I really like this ability to just to charge for a text field. What about file upload? Can I do it there, Chris? Yeah.
Yep. All custom field types now support that option. So, depending on the type of field, it's looking, if it's file, for example, has a file been uploaded or not. So it uses, that specific field's behavior to determine whether the fee should be applied.
Awesome. Okay. Next one, use product group shipping dimensions and weights. Okay. Anybody who's ever made a product from scratch in DecoNetwork has probably at one time gotten and uses ShipStation's live shipping integration. Probably has gotten an email that says, "Do you have live shipping errors?" And you're often like, "Well, what's going on?" Well, one, come over here and I'll tell you what needs to be fixed. But the most common thing I see, Chris, is a new product is created, shipping weights and dimensions haven't been entered, and we have a live shipping method. And we can't calculate a price to charge the customer if we don't know how much it weighs, how big it is when it's folded up, and everything.
Yeah.
So now most products are in a group by default. You don't have to be, but most are. And the nice thing is within the product group, I'll choose just something random here like accessories. We can have default shipping weights and dimensions. Is it a perfect solution for all products in that group? Probably not. But is it a this is definitely a great fallback for when you forget to enter the shipping weights and dimensions, because nothing's worse than the customer contacting you and saying, I can't get to the get past shipping because we've got a problem here. Um, get all that right, Chris? If you don't enter shipping weights and dimensions on a new product, it will take place of these. And correct me if I'm wrong. Let's say that we needed the length, width, height, and weight. And on a product, I put in, the length and the width, but I didn't put the weight. But in the product group, there was a weight. Wouldn't just the weight portion populate to complete the package?
Yeah, and so in a way that this was already kind of addressed for new products that you're creating, right? You could always come in here, set some values, and as you create new products, your new products would inherit these values. But I think the issue has been more for cases where, let's say you created tons of products and you didn't do this step. And so now you have, hundreds of products without those dimensions, and that means going into each one individually and populating those values. So what the way custom products work now is they essentially always by default inherit these values set at their assigned group. And in order to change those, you have to say, I want to override the default values, and then you can put in something custom. So that's kind of their new nature is by default, custom products inherit the values of their assigned group.
Okay, what if it's old products? So our users out there who did that mass import or made all those products and don't want to have to go into each individual one, could they change the product group here and it's going to then update those old products?
So they could change the product group. I
Uh,
believe as part of the
oh,
update,
that's
products that products that have zero values. So if the system finds products that have empty fields, then those products will be switched to use default.
okay. I love our back and forth there, Chris. As soon as you said it was like you could create a new group. I'm like, that's it. Just create a new group at worst. Uh, and then by assigning it, those rules will get passed on uh, if the variables aren't already set within the product.
Right.
Right. Cool. Easy. Um, okay. Next one. Blank product out of stock behavior can now be overridden at a product group or product. So um, we've always been able to say, hey, don't let the customer, be able to add it to cart here for all products, all product groups, but now within individual products or product groups, we can actually control what that inventory rule is. Another thing we can do, Chris, is we have another option here with when it comes to the ability to add to cart if it's out of stock. Can you explain this for us?
Yeah, so we've had some options available already. Three options: one for go ahead and allow adding to cart, one for do not allow adding to cart if it's out of stock on hand, and one option that checked both on hand and the supplier inventory. But we were getting feedback that people were having issues with their items not being available for purchase because their local inventory was out of stock. But essentially, they didn't care that they were out of stock locally. They only cared if the supplier is
Yep.
out of stock. And so we recently added this option, the third one there on in the list that you see, to don't allow adding to cart, but check only the supplier inventory.
Cool. All right. So let's go into the admin settings. So down here in the general settings. Okay. So first one, new quote request email. So if a website is in quote only mode, Chris, the customer's not submitting an order, they're submitting a quote request. And now we have the internet quote request email here that can be edited and is treated differently than the order received email, correct?
Right. It's just a way to kind of give feedback to those users sending in quote requests and, give them feedback about maybe when they may hear back with a response.
Yep, definitely different message than if it was receiving an order. Identify shipping addresses as commercial or residential. There's really no setting here, but this is a good one. Um, So you have your live shipping rates, and that's great, but you also do have the old school ability to connect with like FedEx um, here as well. Now, suppliers like FedEx or even ShipStation, when you're using FedEx or some of the shipping carriers, they charge a different rate if it's being delivered commercially or residentially. I bring up FedEx because in my experience, FedEx is really good at delivering to a commercial location, not as well as a residential. And they charge a different rate for it. So, really, the live shipping calculation is just a little bit more accurate because they're looking at the final determining if that destination is commercial or residential because some of the carriers do charge a different price. Okay, option to not automatically mark completed orders as invoiced. All right, I'm going to guess production order settings, quote and order invoice, Chris.
Yep,
And
should
do
be
not
it.
automatically mark internet orders as invoiced. Cool. Um, Another one. Allow customers to edit shipping addresses for orders. This is great. I get contacted about this all the time. Chris, help me find it. Oh, right
Let's
here.
see. It should be, yep, in that same page.
It's in the same spot. No, that's not I. Right here. So this is what happens probably on a weekly basis with us. We get contacted by a customer. Hey, can I change the shipping address? We change it in Business Hub, which then changes in ShipStation as long as we haven't already bought the label, which is awesome. This is really cool because now we're empowering the customer instead of emailing us, they within their account, as long as the the order hasn't gotten through completion or shipped. We're well, it's really what we said it here. And then yeah, so Chris, I messed that up pretty bad. Until order is ready for production. Let's back up. Ready for production means it's still in awaiting production, correct?
Yep. So you can limit either up to the point we're about to start your order or up to the point where we're about to finish your order.
Once it's been marked as produced, it cannot be changed by
Right.
the customer. Got it. Cool. Okay. And all right, Chris, let's drop over to Business Hub. Okay, first thing, if we start with a new quote or order, there is no longer a default size. Now, it was not defaulting the quantity, but some of our users definitely got caught up. I mean, I get it. So, but everything now is 0 to begin with. It's as clean of a slate to start. That's
Yep.
really it. Uh, Ability to only export selected customers of Business Hub. So, for some of our older users that end up, having thousands of customers in their account, if you exported that whole list, it took a while. And sometimes you didn't need to export the whole list. So I really like that I can, sort and filter like normal here. So let's just say I want to see all of the customers for customshirts.org. So now I can sort by that store. I can select all 19 customers, and now I can export those customers as a CSV. So again, it's just a much quicker way to do this bulk action of exporting specific customers.
Yeah. Essentially, you can generate custom reports of your customers list. Like you said, maybe you want to see only customers with an outstanding balance and then, get a nice sheet of just those customers so that you can follow up about payment, things like that.
Next one, Chris, is going to be custom user fields are now cached at the product level. So this is going to be kind of confusing for a second. Let's go back to the admin. So in the general settings, we can come into customer fields and we can define a field usage. So actually, let me back up. I can create a field. For example, a tax ID is going to be permanent. That's something I want to stay with the account itself. But I think the teacher name is probably the most common one we hear.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe I specifically have a store and that teacher is going to be the one who picks it up. Well, I could create a drop-down list of teachers to choose from. I can choose the store, and then when I define the field usage, I decide where is it going to be shown. And typically, it's going to be at the checkout billing. Now, something like this tax ID, that doesn't change ever. So if I don't make it available at the billing or shipping level on the front end of the store, the customer really isn't going to be able to change it. I only want them to be able to enter at register, or I can touch it in Business Hub. So it never gets cached. Correctly, Chris? If it's not changed, it's not cached. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess the use case is like you said with a field like teacher's name, and it does happen from time to time where, we'll have people set up stores for school, and maybe there was like a PC, a workstation at the school that they were having parents order from or something like that. And so every time somebody checked out, the billing information was changing. So essentially with every order submission, the customer record was getting overwritten. And so they end up with tons of orders for the same customer because,
Yep.
rather than doing a separate registration, they were just having people use the same login. So it's kind of a bit of a, I guess you could say, um, user error, but to handle those types of situations where data for the user may have changed, we now cache custom fields. And that has always been the case for billing information, like your, just customer name, customer address. We've always cached those at the order level, but custom fields, those were only at the customer
Okay.
level. So those would, if you update it for one order, it changes for all orders. And so now each order kind of caches and stores what it took in at the order at the time that that order was placed.
And if that variable wasn't changed, if that field wasn't changed, it's not like it was reset to zero, correct?
Right.
Okay. All right. Definitely helpful. Okay. The next one. Improved reliability of smart PO inventory checks. Okay, I deal with this on a daily basis, guys, in our shop. So we order from Sanmar just about every day. We raise a live PO. And when you raise a PO with Sanmar, you really want to try to pick your closest warehouse. And so I'm in Columbus, Ohio. I want to try to get everything from Cincinnati. And you can see it went through this and I didn't get any errors. So guess what? I can raise this PO from Cincinnati without any problems. If I can't get it all from Cincinnati, I need to let Sanmar decide. And what we've had to do in the past, Chris, is that I'd come here to save, go back, edit purchase order, have the inventory refresh. Now we can essentially change between warehouses or let Sanmar decide without having to really do any refreshing, right?
Yep. Anytime you change that warehouse, the system will know to check inventory again.
That's a really cool feature. Okay, that's fast. Look, Richmond, Virginia does not have it. All right. Display alert when another staff team member is making changes. Nothing's worse than working on a big order to then find out that somebody's playing with it at the same time. So, Chris, let's try this. We have order 835243. I am going to go ahead and throw that embroidery file on here. Chris, are you making a change on your end? So, again, I am a staff member on this account. Chris is also a staff member on this same account. If Chris starts editing or I start editing, you can see here Chris's warning is like, hey, do you want to cancel my edits or do we let Chris's take effect? So we're going to let cancel my edit. We're going to use Chris's change. Voila. That's cool, Chris.
Yeah, it
There.
should prevent a lot of cases where, orders are essentially, what happened to this order? I thought, I added that product or I thought I changed that product. And there are cases where multiple people making changes to the same order simultaneously can cause that type of user error. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a really helpful alert.
Yeah, and we were just joking before the call, Chris. When it comes to website, try not to have two people working on the same website at the same time because
Yeah.
that could definitely create some issues. Okay, allow marking previously approved quotes as rejected. So Chris, what exactly does that mean?
Yeah, so if you click into your quote section, click into one of those saved quotes. It's actually in this state here. So you'll notice you have the option mark quote as rejected. Obviously, once you send a quote to your customer, they have the ability to either approve or reject. But it was the case before this update that the Business Hub operator could no longer reject a quote from their end once they had sent it to the customer. And again, we got feedback that some users still wanted that ability to do it from their end. So we are now exposing that option in Business Hub, even if you've already sent the quote to the customer.
Okay. And you can tell them why you're
Yeah,
rejecting their quote request. Well, I think here's an example. Somebody requests a quote and they upload clearly a licensed design that they probably most likely do not have the rights to use. And
sure.
that's what I'm going to tell them. Hey, no, we can't print this. This is why. Okay. Prevent resyncing of production files to Dropbox after completion. So, for those who didn't know, your artwork, the jobs, can essentially flow straight into Dropbox and you can download the artwork from there. And with one of the last updates, with the Dropbox integration, Chris, you can you can decide when the artwork is sent based on it completing the artwork approval process. Sorry, guys, I never have to come here. Production file sync, so I can choose when it syncs and so forth. But Chris, correct me if I'm wrong. There was a little bit of bug where duplicates would sometimes be showing up in Dropbox. Is that correct?
Right. We got some reports that um, when orders were being marked as produced, artwork that had been taken out of Dropbox would get synced back in. And so some of our users, that's kind of how they use this Dropbox sync is they download the artwork and then they pull it out of there to know, we're already working on that order. And so they don't want the system to add it back because that kind of creates confusion. Has this already, is this already being worked on or not? And so, yeah, we just patched up that bug so that if you take artwork out of that Dropbox, we won't add it back in. Obviously, if the artwork changes, that would be a case where we would add it back. But if the artwork remains the same and you mark that order as complete, then we don't add it back in.
Cool. All right, Chris, here's another little bit of a safety net I would call bulk actions. And this is also true for products. So if you select multiple products or multiple lines and you want to do an action like mark as produced, uh, it's not mark as produced. Chris, what's a good example of this of having to confirm that is the action you want to do? Because it's not
Yeah, so I
every
think
bulk action.
yeah, it's essentially when you choose the select all option.
So if I select all
Yeah,
32 and then I mark as production complete, now see, I could have to
yeah.
hit
So it's essentially
32.
we're trying to prevent accidental action on large data sets, right? We've had cases where, oh, I accidentally deleted, my 3,000 customer records. So this is essentially an effort to mitigate those types of situations.
Awesome. Cool, Chris. All right. Um, that's it for Business Hub. Let's talk about websites. So, this first one is kind of funny to me. Log in via email. Okay. So, this is pretty common. I get asked all the time, do customers have to create a customer account? And it's like they aren't doing any extra work. We still need their billing details. We still need their email to communicate. They aren't having to do any extra work. But when they go to place a reorder, they then are getting notified, hey, your email already exists. You need to log in. And then it creates all types of confusion. But Chris, it's how it really should be because you really don't want the same customer to have 10 profiles with 10 different orders. And then they start asking about it, just becomes a mess. So,
Yeah.
one, customers could always reset their password. That's what this new feature practically is, but it doesn't reset the password. So if the customer clicks login via email, they are then emailed their credentials, correct, Chris? And then they just re-enter them here.
They're not emailed the credentials, they're emailed a link to log in. So it's kind of
So,
similar like when you send a
quote.
quote
Okay.
for review where that quote already includes a login token that
Yep.
automatically logs them in without having to enter username and password. So it's that same concept, but not tied to an order. So they get an email with that link to log in. And it's for those people that, are never going to remember their username and password, which is pretty common. We do get that through support quite a bit. So I think this is a great addition to web stores.
Even though that every browser asks you, do you want to save it?
Right.
No, I want to forget. Okay, so new option for decorated products to ignore blank product size surcharges. All right, that's a little bit of a mouthful, and I really like this one. Let's see if I can find the right website that I was playing with. Okay, so first of all, down here at administration, decorated products. These are the default settings for all new products moving forward. So remember that if you ever do this, it's for all future products. Okay, so with one of the last updates, we have the ability to ignore color price differences. So, we print on white versus black. We don't need the underbase. Maybe we charge different price. Well, now we can ignore the color. Same thing with sizes. And this is it's not confusing, but there's a little bit to keep in mind. One, let's go back to products and let's use like the Gildan 5000 and it's going to have a price increase for the 2X. And that is coming from the supplier. And what we've heard quite a bit of, Chris, is I want a nice round number for that 2x increase in price. I do not want to, see 236 as the increase for a 2XL. So, one, we can ignore higher prices for larger sizes. That's one option. The
Right.
other option is to actually set what that number is for each larger size. So within the product, I can ignore blank If I ignore this, then it's gonna say a 3XL is the same price as a small through an XL. Okay. If I come into costs and I set custom decorated product surcharge, I can actually set what the price is for that size and even color type for this item. Now, Chris, this is obviously something a store owner can do. So it's not like you have to have a DecoNetwork admin account. The store owner could do this. If they're increasing this price, they are technically increasing what we would call the wholesale price, the cost. They are not increasing their commission for this order, correct?
That's right.
Okay. That's really cool. I would think that the roundness of numbers is probably requested more than ignoring larger size prices, but having both options is really cool and being able to control it product by product as well.
Yeah.
Uh, Chris, out of curiosity, if I did this and then I copied a product, wouldn't I be able to keep these same settings?
I haven't tried that, but I would assume so.
Okay, I've got to ask a question in the middle of this that try to stump you at least once. All right. Okay, here's one, Chris, because I've designed a lot of sites at Deco. I am pumped to be able to use an italic font sometimes, or a font as italic. Now, let's see if this one is. Not every font can be italicized. Uh, and this may be one of them. It's also a header. Let's try. So, italics. You can see that's now italicized. This little box right here really hasn't worked as well since version 8 came out. So that's what that is. It's small. I really like it. Here's another one that's small. 5 column rows have been my nemesis forever because it hasn't been possible to easily, it's possible just that easily to get these to be 5 perfectly across. Well, if you come into responsive properties, advanced mode, you can go deep. But now we can choose 25% or 20%, sorry. 5 times 20 is going to get us to 100. And now we're equally across. It's small. Most people won't even use it, but it made me smile, Chris.
Yeah.
Increase front end design product image resolution. I think this is a really cool one. So, Chris, I mean, I can see it right here. That image looks sharper,
So
right?
it should be mainly in the actual designer tool. Um,
I don't know, Chris.
the Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what resolution you have these set to, but that those necessarily haven't been limited in the size that you could set. But in the designer itself, the maximum resolution that the system would generate that image is 600 by 600 pixels. And, you know, for most screen sizes, it actually renders larger than that. So that image was being scaled up larger than 600 by 600, causing it to, in many cases appear blurry. And so we've doubled that resolution now to 1200 by 1200. And so I think for most, typical monitors, that's going to give you a nice crisp image for the underlying product image in the designer.
It had been doing that already back here in Business Hub, correct?
So in Business Hub, it's not really, I guess, required because this particular view is only 400 by 400 pixels. So we don't necessarily need a larger
Okay.
resolution image. But again, in the front end where that goes full screen,
Yep.
and again, that can be, pretty large.
On
That's
the
where we
design tool.
needed to kind of up that resolution.
Okay. And again, it doubled. It went from 600 by 600 to 1200 by 1200, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely a big one. All right, Chris, one of the last ones is a custom page path for a link. Uh, you'll have to tell me when I might want to do this. So I'll just choose something like the about page. And I think link to internal page? No?
No,
No?
so it's actually an option for custom pages. I'm not sure if you have a custom page set up here, maybe the unisex one.
Yeah, okay. I was wondering if that was a system page. That was the problem. Okay. That makes
Yep.
sense.
So if you click into advanced for that, you'll see the new option
Yep.
to override the default URL. So the system generates that URL based on the page name, but you may want the URL to be something different for maybe SEO purposes, for example. And so now you have control over what that page URL will be for custom pages.
Okay. Okay. Because my my thinking, Chris, we've always been able to do the meta tags, which does influence some things, but this meta tag is not influencing the URL, right? The
Right.
URL is coming from the page name, but now we
That's right.
can change that. Um, that could break links, or if I change it and that link was already out there, the link still wouldn't die.
The system should update existing links, and that's the case for existing links as well as if you, let's say, set a custom URL and then later change that custom URL, the system should also update then as well.
Okay, cool. All right, Chris, there's one more update. It's kind of a big one. The
It is the big one,
Shopify.
yeah.
It is the Shopify integration. Let me get logged into this other account. So, Shopify integration. Uh, First thing everybody has to know, it's an app. You have to come down here and you have to enable it. Something that's very important to remember about this app is you have to be on DecoPay in order to be able to use it. That is the rule. You must be using DecoPay. Okay. So the Shopify integration, Chris, we're essentially mapping products from Shopify to Deco through an affiliate store. So if you're going to have a client and they have an existing Shopify site, you essentially need to launch a new store for them, which means you must be on the premium or enterprise plan of DecoNetwork. So you got to add an app, you have to be on DecoPay, and you have to be on Premium Enterprise. Sounds like a lot. It's really not. All right. The new feature is right here, Chris. Fulfill Shopify orders. And we're not going to go into crazy detail because we're about to release a different video that does that for you. Um, but essentially in Shopify, when you would make a product, you would upload a finished mock-up of artwork already on the product. And what you now do in Shopify or in that other Shopify store you're going to fulfill for is you're going to create a meta custom field so that we can attach the design. We need Deco needs the design so that you can then download it and print it or embroider it, whatever you're going to do. So in Shopify, you first generate an API key. You then plug in that API key information here. That allows us to sync between the Shopify site and DecoNetwork. Um, Once that connection has been made, Chris, you can then start syncing the products from Shopify. And when it syncs from Shopify, it's going to be the product and the artwork. And then we have to map it. But we don't have to map necessarily the products before orders start coming in. We could actually kind of wait to do this until the orders start coming in. So
Right.
once you start syncing orders, and when I say sync, the Shopify owner decides to outsource that job and it gets um, essentially purchased through this Shopify store on the DecoNetwork account. Is that is that right, Chris? The way I worded that.
Yeah.
Um, and Chris, when we map, we need what we want to do is we want to act like this is any other order in Business Hub. We want to be able to raise a purchase order. We want to be able to download the artwork at the correct size. So when it comes to mapping, this product was in Shopify. And Shopify just said, hey, it's a long sleeve white t-shirt. It's the G2400. But Deco needs to know what that product is. So that's where we come in, map it, and now that item, the SKUs have been mapped. So now again, we can raise those purchase orders and everything else we need to. When it comes to the design, remember, and I uploaded a JPEG just for this example. This was uploaded in Shopify. Once that order was essentially outsourced to the DecoNetwork fulfillment center, this job came over, the artwork came, and it has to just essentially be placed on the product um, so that when it goes into Business Hub on the design tool, it's where it needs to be. Now, Chris, the mapping of products and orders, it's not something you have to do every time. Some of this you map the product and it's pretty much now that product, no matter what the design is, falls into those same settings. Is that correct?
Yeah, essentially you would do that mapping step once for every new product that is coming in. If you have, let's say that Shopify store has 10 products that it's selling, you get your first few orders and they across all of them they contain all those 10 products. You map them, then any subsequent order that process is done and it'll just flow straight through.
Yeah. So, big takeaway here for the Shopify integration. One, it's not for custom orders. It's for pre-decorated retail orders. Um, Secondly, it is really meant for you to satisfy customers who don't want to leave Shopify. And they may not want to leave Shopify because one, they're selling another product there. Two, maybe they're a big influencer and they have a bunch of other things on their Shopify site and then they just have that store. They don't want to build a whole new site or have you build an affiliate site on Deco. This is a powerful tool for you to satisfy customer needs. It is not necessarily something that I would go chasing or think that I'm going to replace the way I make affiliate sites in Deco by using Shopify. It's a great tool, but I highly suggest using it when it makes sense. Every tool in the toolbox has a time and place. You don't think that the Shopify integration is just some magical tool for any situation. It has a specific time and place, and it is very powerful for those clients that really make sense to go a little bit further as far as the setup. But hey, what's beautiful, Chris, is everything flows into Business Hub just like normal. Um, Nothing is different. Your staff doesn't have to treat anything differently. It's just really that mapping of one time and we're good to go. But it is a pull method. You do not do anything in Deco that then gets pushed to Shopify that gets pulled back to Deco. It's done in Shopify. It gets pushed or essentially pulled into Deco and processed from there. Chris, that's a lot of updates we went over. 8.609, it's a great update, just like every year, DecoNetwork puts out multiple updates. The software is never finished. I mean, it's always evolving. It's a fun process, Chris. You know, as a user of the software for 14 years, I've made a lot of suggestions over the years. And it wasn't until I became part of DecoNetwork's internal team that I see the steps that it takes to have a simple feature added to the software. How many people have to uh, give different angles and opinions and think about the repercussions of one little setting change. There's a lot. The software is very powerful. There's a lot of features being built on top of one another. Um, but yeah, everybody, your feature requests are always taken into consideration. There's only so much time in the day, but hey, the DecoNetwork is way ahead of everybody else. The software is very powerful. I love a lot of the new features that have been added, Chris, and some of the things that are being discussed for the future are also very exciting. Again, come up here, visit the Help Center. You can find the DecoNetwork release notes. I always Google, Chris, so I'll be honest, not even sure where they are. Right there. 8.609. 448 tasks were applied. Uh, Again, the documentation is very helpful. If you have any specific questions, submit a support ticket. Client services will take care of you. Chris, thank you very much for joining me for this video. Hopefully everybody found it helpful. And guys, enjoy 8.609.
Take care, Zach.